Hey there, welcome to Sleepy Granny Stories channel. Close your eyes now and let yourself drift to a place where rivers run silver beneath the moon, where the water whispers secrets only the stars can hear. Tonight, we travel to a bend in such a river, where willows trail their fingers in the current and the air smells of wild mint and possibility. Here, in this gentle corner of the world, lived an otter named Finn, and this is his story, a story about the difference between shining for others and glowing from within. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and come with me to where the river meets the reeds, where magic lives in the ordinary, and where one small otter is about to discover something extraordinary about himself. Finn was not like the other otters. While his family dove quietly for fish and groomed their fare in peaceful contentment, Finn had discovered something intoxicating: the sound of applause. It had started innocently enough. One morning, he had performed a particularly graceful backflip while catching a trout, and a family of geese had honked their approval. The sound had sent a thrill through his chest, warm as sunlight, bright as fireworks. From that moment, everything changed. Each dawn, Finn would position himself on the performance rock, a flat stone in the middle of the river where the current created a natural stage. He would wait there, whiskers twitching with anticipation, until an audience arrived, and they always did. The geese would paddle close, rabbits would pause on the bank, even the dignified herons would stop their fishing to watch. Finn would spin and dive, juggle smooth river stones, and slide down the muddy bank with exaggerated flair. Each trick was more elaborate than the last, each performance designed to elicit wonder. The applause came in many forms: honks and chirps, the flutter of wings, the soft thumping of rabbit feet against the earth. Finn collected these sounds like treasures, each one affirming that he was special, that he was seen, that he mattered. But applause, Finn discovered, was a peculiar thing. It faded quickly, like mist beneath the morning sun, and once it faded, he needed more. He began performing earlier each day, staying later into the evening. His tricks grew more daring, more desperate. He would dive from higher rocks, spin faster, push his small body to its limits. His sister, Marina, would watch from the shallows with concern in her dark eyes. His mother would call him to rest, to eat, to simply float and feel the river's embrace. But Finn barely heard them. The next performance was always calling, the next round of applause just within reach. At night, when the river grew dark and the audiences had gone home, Finn would lie on his back in the water and stare at the stars. His body would ache. His heart would feel strangely hollow, but he would tell himself that tomorrow's show would fill that hollowness, that the next wave of approval would be a one that truly satisfied. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold, an old owl named Ophelia settled on a branch above the performance rock. She had travelled far, her feathers silver with age and wisdom. Finn, always eager for a new audience member, immediately launched into his routine. He spun and splashed, dove and dazzled, pouring every ounce of energy into the performance. When he finished, panting and proud, he looked up at the owl expectantly. But Ophelia did not hoot or flutter her wings. She simply gazed at him with eyes like amber moons. The silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Finn felt something crack inside his chest, a small fissure in the armour he had built from applause. Ophelia finally spoke, her voice soft as falling leaves. She asked him a question that hung in the air like starlight. She asked him when he had last played simply for the joy of it, when he had last dove into the water not to impress, but merely to feel the cool embrace of the current, when he had last laughed at his own silliness rather than calculating its effect on others. Finn opened his mouth to answer, but found he could not. The question had struck something deep and true within him, and he realized with a start that he could not remember. The owl said nothing more. She spread her wings and lifted into the darkening sky, leaving Finn alone with the river and his thoughts. The next morning, Finn climbed onto the performance rock as usual, but something felt different. The stone beneath his paws felt colder. The river's song seemed to ask him questions he could not answer. The geese arrived, honking their readiness for the show. The rabbits gathered on the bank. Even a curious fox-kit appeared, eyes bright with anticipation. But Finn could not perform. For the first time in months, he stood frozen on his rock, feeling the weight of all those watching eyes. Without the certainty of applause, the tricks felt hollow, purposeless. He was an otter-shaped shell, empty of everything but the need to be seen. Quietly, almost apologetically, he slipped into the water and swam away downstream. Behind him, the audience murmured in confusion before gradually dispersing, returning to their own lives with barely a backward glance. Finn swam far from his usual haunts, past familiar bends and into wilder waters. He found a hidden cove where willows created a curtain of green and gold, where the water moved in gentle eddies, eyes upon him, no expectations hovering in the air, just the river, the sky, and the peculiar ache in his chest. He floated on his back, letting the current carry him in lazy circles. The water supported him without judgment. The clouds drifted overhead without expectation. The world continued its ancient rhythms, utterly indifferent to whether he performed or not. And in that indifference, Finn felt something unexpected. relief. Days passed in the hidden cove. At first, Finn felt restless, twitchy with the absence of his daily shows. But slowly, incrementally, something began to shift. One afternoon, he noticed the way sunlight fragmented into diamonds on the water's surface. He had never really seen it before, not truly. He had been too busy planning his next trick, too consumed with thoughts of how to use the light to dramatic effect. But now he simply looked at it and found it beautiful for no reason at all. Another day he caught a fish, not with flair, but with simple, efficient joy. The feeling of his muscles working in harmony, the cool slide of water along his fur, the satisfaction of the catch, these things were enough. They required no witness to be real. He began to play the way he had as a pup before applause had taught him to perform. He would dive for interesting pebbles and arrange them on the bank in patterns that pleased only him. He would invent games with no rules and no winner. He would float and think and dream without trying to turn those dreams into a show. One morning, Marina found him in the hidden cove. She had been searching for days, worry etched in the lines around her eyes. When she saw him, she expected to find her brother diminished, defeated by the absence of his audiences. Instead, she found him arranging river stones into a spiral pattern on the bank, humming softly to himself. He looked up as she approached, and she saw something in his face that had been missing for months: peace. They swam together in companionable silence. Marina did not ask about the performances, or the audiences, or why he had left. She simply dove and surfaced beside him, sharing the quiet joy of being alive in the water. And Finn realized that this unwitnessed moment of connection felt more real than 1,000 rounds of applause. Eventually, Finn returned to the main river. But he was different now, changed in ways both subtle and profound. He still performed sometimes, but not out of need. When the mood struck him and the sun was bright and his body felt full of energy, he would spin and dive and play with abandon. But he did it for himself first, for the pure pleasure of movement and joy. If others happened to watch and applaud, that was nice. If they did not, that was nice too. The applause no longer filled a hole inside him, because the hole itself had healed, filled in with something more durable than validation: genuine contentment. He taught himself to notice when the old hunger crept back in, the tightness in his chest that meant he was performing for approval rather than joy. And when he noticed it, he would slip away to his hidden cove and remember what it felt like to be enough without an audience. His mother noticed the change. She would watch him play with a tenderness in her eyes, recognizing the return of the pup he had once been. Spontaneous, sincere, present. His sister noticed too. she began to join him more often, the two of them inventing games and chasing fish with the kind of laughter that needs no applause because it is its own reward. Even the geese and rabbits noticed, though they could not have said exactly what was different. They found themselves drawn to watch, not because Finn was performing for them, but because genuine joy is magnetic in a way that performance never quite is. One day, a young otter arrived at the river, a visitor from upstream, brash and eager and desperate to impress. He launched into an elaborate series of tricks, clearly fishing for praise, his eyes darting constantly to the shore to gauge reactions. Finn recognized himself in that young otter, saw the same hunger, the same hollow place that no amount of applause could fill. After the young otter had exhausted himself, Finn swam close. He did not offer advice or criticism. Instead, he simply invited the visitor to join him in a game he had invented, a playful race through the reeds, pointless and joyful, and observed by no one but themselves. At first, the young otter was confused, kept looking around for an audience. But slowly, Finn's genuine delight became contagious. The visitor began to laugh, to play without calculation, to experience the river instead of using it as a stage. And in that moment, Finn understood that his journey had come full circle. He had learned something worth knowing, and now he could share it, not through performance, but through presence. The seasons turned as they always do. Summer gave way to autumn, autumn to winter, winter to spring. Through it all, Finn continued to live in the balance he had found, performing sometimes, playing often, resting when needed. He discovered that validation from others was not wrong or bad, but it was not sustenance. It was dessert, nice to have, sweet to taste, but not something to build a life upon. The real nourishment came from engagement with life itself, the feel of water, the taste of fish, the warmth of sun on fur, the companionship of family, the satisfaction of moving through the world with purpose and presence. These things did not require an audience. They were complete in themselves, perfect in their ordinary beauty. On a clear night in early spring, Finn floated on his back beneath a sky absolutely crowded with stars. The river held him gently, rocking him in its ancient arms. He thought about the otter he had been, so hungry for approval, so desperate to be seen. He felt compassion for that version of himself, understanding now that the hunger had been real, even if it had been misdirected. He thought about the owl's question, the one that had cracked him open and let the light in. When had he last played simply for the joy of it? Now he could answer. Today. Yesterday. Tomorrow. Every day. in moments both large and small, witnessed and unwitnessed, applauded and ignored. The stars wheeled overhead in their silent ballet, performing for no one and everyone. Magnificent, without needing to be told they were magnificent. And Finn, the small otter floating in the silver river, understood at last that this was the secret. To shine not for the applause, but simply because shining was his nature. As dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, Finn climbed onto the old performance rock one last time. But he did not climb there to perform. He climbed there simply because he loved the way the first light felt on his face, the way the river looked in that liminal moment between night and day. There was no audience, there was no applause, there was only Finn and the river and the breaking day, and it was more than enough. It was everything. And so, dear listener, as your own day winds towards its close, and sleep reaches out its tender arms to hold you, remember Finn's journey. Remember that your worth is not measured in likes or applause, in validation or recognition. Your worth simply is, as constant as the river, as certain as the stars. Play for the joy of playing. Create for the love of creating. Shine not because someone is watching, but because shining is what you do when you are fully, authentically alive. Let this story carry you gently into sleep, knowing that tomorrow you can wake and be yourself, not the performed version, not the validated version, but the real version, the version that needs no applause because it is already complete. Sleep well, dear listener. The river flows on, the stars keep watch, and you are enough, have always been enough, will always be enough, just as you are.